Hey, good Wednesday morning, everybody. Hope you're having a good morning today. I am. I've got my cup of coffee this morning as we spend a few minutes in this Wednesday midweek checkup we call Coffee with PC. My coffee this morning, it's a little Italian roast from Starbucks. We went through all of the holiday blend that we bought, the Christmas blend that I really like, and so we're back to the regular, and this is really good. Actually, just on the coffee side of things. Found in the cabinet. I don't remember if it was me or maybe Denise saw it and pulled it out. A coffee maker. She got me a pour-over coffee maker, the Chemex coffee maker with the filters that you pour over in the fluted carafe, and so I've been using that recently, and grinding the beans and putting it in the pour-over coffee maker, boiling the water, and it's really good. I'm quite enjoying it. Glad she came across that. Glad she pointed it out. And so, however you're brewing your coffee this morning, I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am mine. Today is January 20th. You probably know is also Inauguration Day. Every 4 years when we have a presidential election on the 20th is when there's an inauguration. Now let me put your mind at ease. I am not going to talk about politics this morning. That is not at all what I want to get into. I try to avoid that in many ways, but as I was thinking about it, it did occur to me one interesting, I don't know why these sorts of things stick in my mind, but when we talk about politicians, no matter what level of government they're in, we often call them public servants. It's one of those titles that they even say, I've spent my life in public service. It's an interesting phrase, an interesting thing that's gotten attached to political careers, but that's nonetheless what we call them. And I was thinking about that idea, particularly of what it means to be a servant, in their case through politics, public servant, and realizing how important and how integral it should be to our identity as followers of Jesus that we should be servants. I mean, Jesus himself, there are so many passages in the Bible, in the account of his life, the Gospels, that tell us how important that was. He says that he did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. One of the earliest, some people even call it a hymn to Jesus, in Philippians chapter 2, talks about that Jesus did not consider equality with God something to hold on to, but emptied himself and took the form of a servant. And maybe one of the places where we see that most perfectly illustrated happens toward the end of his life, just before his arrest and trial and crucifixion, when he's gathered with his disciples for what we call the Last Supper. As they're in that upper room and they're going to have the Passover meal together that he takes and gives a new meaning to, where he takes the bread and the cup, and we know today in our churches we celebrate the Lord's Supper or communion. It's called different things, where we remember that Last Supper he had with his disciples. But before they got to the supper, there was this one common courtesy that hadn't been observed. See, they were using a room. It wasn't one of their own homes. It wasn't one of them was the host. They had found a place where they could have this Passover meal together. And as would be the case in most occasions when you went in, particularly if you're going to eat together, and remember, when they ate reclining on the floor. They weren't at tables sitting up. They were leaning on their side next to each other, and one of the things that they would do to help make that a more pleasant experience is there would be someone who would wash the feet of all the guests coming into a meal like that, because your feet lying down would be close and pointed at someone else's upper body or their face where they're eating. So it's just a common courtesy, and it's also a reality of their time. I'm sure many of you have heard this before, that because of the nature of their sandals, their open shoes, and the dust in that part of the world, that walking everywhere they went, their feet got a little dirty, a little dusty. And so as a way, before they came into the home, particularly in a meal like this, there would be a servant station that would wash the guest's feet. But on this occasion, that didn't happen. There wasn't someone for that task, and it was Jesus himself that the scripture records. I've been reading this. I was reading this yesterday in my devotion time in John chapter 13. Jesus himself that gets up, he gets water, takes off his outer cloak, puts a towel around his waist, and he begins to wash his disciples' feet. It's a really remarkable thing. I mean, I'm I'm sure they were as shocked as anybody that in their group, he's the leader, he's the Messiah, he's the one they've placed their hope in, that they've followed for 3 years now, and he is going to do this most lowly of tasks, this servant task for his disciples. Peter, the one who often speaks up about things, he's one that speaks right up, and he wants to say, Lord, there's no way you're going to die. You can't wash my feet. And Jesus basically says, if I don't wash your feet, you have no part with me. And so Peter takes the, just jumping in. He says, well, if don't stop at my feet, just wash all of me. And Jesus says that, if you already had a bath, I only need to wash your feet. Your whole body is clean. And Peter relents to that, and Jesus finishes this. And then he says in John 13, verse 14, he says this, now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. Now, there are some religious groups that take this literally, that this is part of their regular worship, that there are times when they wash each other's feet. And if you've ever been a part of that kind of a service, it can be a very meaningful thing. It can be a humbling thing from both sides. If you're the one who has to wash somebody else's feet, and let's be honest, we might wear closed shoes and we might not walk everywhere we go, but the thought of washing somebody else's feet might kind of be something you don't really want to do. So it would be humbling to do that. And on the side of receiving it, it's a little bit, it can make you a little anxious as well, because, just like to submit, to allow somebody to do that can be tough. But I don't know that the only way we can do what Jesus says, follow his example of washing one another's feet, only happens when we have that specific occasion that happens at times where we literally wash feet. I think it's a call for us, on the one hand, just to realize our role to be servants to one another. As politicians are called public servants, we as Christians, how much more, I say, should we be known as people who serve? If Jesus is our Lord, if Jesus is our example, and if we watch his example, that should just be part of our life. We should be looking for ways that we can serve one another. In fact, in that same passage in Philippians 2, Paul reminds us, before he describes Jesus, who is the example, he says that we should think of others as better than ourselves, that there should be a humility about how we relate to others, looking for ways that we can serve each other. And so I wanted to encourage you this morning as we think about, I think this is a reminder for me, because the unique nature of the last year or so, with all that has happened, and we've gone from kind of being out and about to be more close to a smaller group of people, and that might be in your family if you're not going out very much, as I know a lot of people still aren't, and it probably applies to us in our church. We have a smaller group of people that are attending in person, just because of the nature of things that are now, and the tendency, and here's what I want to get to, the tendency as we kind of narrow those parameters, as we draw into a few people we're closer to, is to focus more and more internally. And I think that even as a church is a danger we always face, but given the nature of what's going on, that's a big temptation, that our focus turns more inward, and we want to be concerned about our fellow church members, people we've worshiped alongside for years, to make sure they're okay and they've got what they need. But we also need to look for ways that we, as the Church of Jesus Christ, can follow his example, can do what he did, and model a life of serving others. What does that look like? I don't know. When I guess it was 8 or so years ago, when John Wesley Barnhill was on staff here and his family was here, he led us to do some things in our community, serve and evangelism. One that we've done for years, that's one of my favorite. We didn't get to do it this year because of things, but we do free Christmas gift wrapping. When he was here, we did lots of other things that he gave us lots of ideas, and basically it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can be something just simple, just like Jesus saw a need in that group at that Last Supper, and he just simply was willing to do what it takes to meet it. That's what servanthood is. It's looking around at the needs, and maybe it starts in your family, or in your church family, but it might go to your neighbor. It might go to people that you care about. Maybe it's coworkers or others that you can see, how can I do something? What can I do to meet a need they have that would allow me, as Jesus said, to wash their feet? Not literally necessarily, but figuratively. Somebody that needs help in their yard, somebody that maybe is ill and could use help with a meal, or maybe with children that could use a little help babysitting or watching the kids or shopping, or the number of possibilities are absolutely infinite. So that's why I want to encourage you today. And as we go into this new year, we want to be more purposeful as we look forward to how we can keep our focus outward on the needs of others and live a life where we look to serve, following the example of Jesus, who did it even here to the extreme of doing what was a very lowly task for his disciples. How could we follow that example and be an encouragement, be a help for those that we know, and point them ultimately, and this is our goal, to point them to Jesus, who gave his life. He said, I came not to be served, but to serve and to give my life as a ransom for many, to point people to the life given for salvation for those who would believe. So look for those opportunities this week and this month and all this year of serving others to follow the example of Jesus. And we'll try to encourage each other as we get together in worship, whether it's in person. I'll put the registration link here on this video, so if you're planning to join us in person, you can let us know, or whether it's through the internet, through streaming of our services, a great way to connect with us there if you're not able to or comfortable with being in the crowd in the service. We can encourage each other that way. And I hope you'll let me know, maybe even through comments or other ways, of ways you're going to try to be a servant to those you know. So do that this week. We'll look forward to connecting with you in worship on the weekend, and we will see you then and talk to you soon. Thanks so much.